chose on that note, not just because I'm gay. I mean, yeah, obviously that too, but it was also from the quote, "From the greatest storm comes a very bright rainbow." So that quote really resonated with me. I'm claiming the brightest rainbow ever.
Step in.
And that's the scary part. Like, I also came from a Christian background, which I no longer identify with either. Like, I grew up and was raised Catholic. My father was Greek Orthodox, and my mother was Catholic, but I was baptized Catholic. And early on, I was like in high school when I realized, like, even though like I went to an all religious Christian, mostly girls' school, there were some guys there that were starting to filter in that we had, but um, yeah, I was in high school. I was like, I'm just gonna go through the ring of it because like that's I don't have a choice, but I just don't ascribe to these beliefs. This doesn't feel right for me. I was pretty young. I don't know how old you were when you were, or how young you were when you first like started peeling off from it. But for me, it was I was in high school. It just did not feel good to me, and I hated Bible study. I It was just like so intimidating. It was just very heavy. It did not feel good. And I could feel my soul being crushed. I don't know how it felt for you, but that's how it felt for me. It felt very depressing and heavy.
Yeah, for me it was kind of the opposite. Like I wasn't raised in an overly religious household at all. Like we identified
Mm.
as Christian and we went to church on Christmas and New Year's and I was baptized, but my mom was very open to other things and we never had it shoved down our throat at all. But it was when I was in my when I was younger, I wanted to be a nun. So I definitely like moved in that direction from a young age. I thought that would be like the coolest thing ever to just hang out with God all day and garden and bake and do whatever. That was like my child me when I wanted to be a nun. But then when I got older, I went through a whole thing where I was addicted to drugs, I was suicidal, I was dealing with depression, eating
Mm.
disorder, like every fucking thing had going on. And I saw friends who were in church and I saw how it turned their life around. And I thought, oh, well, maybe it's time to look into this. And I had an amazing experience. Like I was the one who was going to church like 3 days a week. And my mom would be like, "You're going to
Mm.
church again?" I'm like, "Yep." Bible study, the whole thing, because I was learning.
Wow.
Yeah, but the things I was learning had a lot to do with shifting your mindset and understanding that you can create whatever you want in your life. And I have to give credit to the time I spent there, because even though I didn't really buy into a lot of like the actual core beliefs of what was written in the Bible, the things I gained from it and the healing I experienced while I was in there was really transformational. Now, knowing what I do now, would I go back and take that path? Maybe not, but at the time it led me where I am today. So I'm grateful for it. But that's the thing that I felt really torn about leaving, because it was like, I don't believe what's in this book. Like I know there's some good teachings, but I just don't buy this shit. And I definitely don't agree with their view on a lot of things, like especially women, queer people, everything like that. Like I don't believe in any of this stuff, but it felt right on other levels. And the people I knew, like those were my friends. That was a community I was in. So I felt very alone, like moving away from it. And I went through a period where I knew what wasn't right for me, but I didn't know what was. And it was like this empty feeling. And I moved back into witchcraft because I always felt like I swung back and forth between the two things, but I never experienced a sense of community as a witch as I did when I
Mm.
was a Christian. And that's one thing that I'm fine with it now, because I have an online community that I love. And I've come to the place now where I know that I function really well on my own as a practitioner and I can build community or be part of community in other ways. But yeah, it was an interesting path for me just because it felt right and it felt really good on so many levels. But at my core, I knew that it wasn't really true for me.
Yeah, I hear you. There are some positive things like on empowering us, like you ask, believe, receive. I think that quote comes from the Bible. And that's a positive thing, but yeah, most of it is like, let's update it and upgrade it because we're moved past a lot of it. And, like I was saying earlier, it was like really deconstructed and reconstructed by people, not just the word of God. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, do you want to talk about your journey with witchcraft and stuff? Because like I know, because like it seems that some witches on the internet can be quite proprietary at what it means to be a witch, and you have a very more open and inclusive approach to it, which I really like and vibe with. Do you want to talk a little bit more on that?
Yeah, for sure. So to touch on that point, I think if you feel called to call yourself a witch and you're practicing witchcraft in any way that feels aligned for you, then you get to be a witch. It's not a hereditary thing. And I understand that there are closed traditions and that's a different story. But generally speaking, witch is just a word that anyone can claim if they really truly desire to. And my own path started back when I got into witchcraft around the age of 14, but before then, I was exposed to more like occult things when I was really young. I remember my mom having her girlfriends over on the weekend, and they would have like a girls' night at our house, and they would have wine and play with a Ouija board. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I wasn't allowed to play with them, but I heard the stories about it. And I heard stories about this spirit that lived in our house. His name was Jesse. He lived inside a toad. And as a little kid, I thought, this is like fucking amazing. We have like a toad ghost in the basement that like changes the lights and opens and closes the doors. We lived in this old farmhouse, and there was always kind of like eerie things happening, but I was never afraid of it. And then moving forward, I think I was around the age of I think it was around 9 or 10 maybe, when I picked up my first book on divination, and it had palm reading and astrology and
Mm.
things like that. Dove right into it. And this is before I really knew about witchcraft, but I carried that thing around like a Bible, and I would like make notes and learn how to read palms and do all that stuff. And then around the age of 14, this is when I was really feeling that connection to um, get closer to what I called it God back then. I would call it the universe these days, but I just wanted this really closer connection to this energy that we're all part of. And Christianity was the only way that I thought that I could do that. That was the only spiritual path
Mm.
I'd ever been exposed to. So that's when I wanted to be a nun. But I found this other book on magic, and the first half of the book was actually practical magic, like folk magic. And then the second half of the book was on Wicca. And when I discovered Wicca, I was like, there's an actual religion that goes along with witchcraft. This is like the coolest thing ever. So that was my gateway onto the path. And I spent a couple years really digging deep into it. It was the 90s, so we didn't have the internet. Well, early 90s, so the internet wasn't easily accessible for most people.
It
And
was just starting, yeah.
yeah, so I had books, and I remember there was this one book, and the woman who wrote it, she owned her own witchcraft shop in Salem, and you could write away for the catalog, and the catalog was literally like these like paper with like little like computer printed out pictures of like the different items on like a little like old fashioned computer printer. It was the cutest thing ever. And I wish I had have kept it for like nostalgia's sake. But anyways, I got into Wicca, and then I realized that a lot of the teachings in that didn't really feel good for me, because the like doing the rituals just felt like going through the motions, and calling on like the god and goddess the way that it was laid out in the books that I was reading. I just felt like I was going through things for the sake of going through them without actually having a connection to anything. And I put spirituality on the back burner in my teens. I ended up moving to the city that I'm in currently. I went to college, I worked full time, and I just got caught up in doing like life stuff. And then it was sort of with me, like I'd be drawn back into witchcraft over the years, but never as strong as I was when I was a kid, because I really feel like I had a major spiritual awakening back around 14. And then it was after I started my cleaning business, I got really into like the law of attraction and manifestation and new age spirituality and personal development, and witchcraft just came back in then. And that's
Mm.
when it it felt like it was my second intro into this world in a deeper way. And it felt like home. And then previous to that, I bounced back and forth, because I'd be in church, but I'd also be at Chapter's bookstore on the weekend, kind of like eyeing up the new age section, seeing what was over there, and then feeling really guilty, because if anyone from church saw me looking at that stuff, I'd be labeled as evil. So there was just a lot of back and forth stuff. But my path has definitely not been a straight one. It's been very, very crooked, very bumpy. And now the way I see it is like I do what feels right for me. I try not to take things from other cultures. I want to be careful that I'm not doing anything that's inappropriate that way. But
Yeah.
if a spirit comes to me and I get the nudge to work with a certain spirit, I will do that privately without any problem. I don't feel like I need to be, part of a certain tradition in order to have a personal experience. Would I openly teach or share that kind of stuff? Probably not, because again, I think that's for the people who come from that tradition and culture. But witchcraft, I feel it's so easy to create and carve your own path because there's so much available and there's so much flexibility because there are no rules, which can have a downside for a lot of people who crave structure in their spiritual practice. A lot of people come to me with like they want to do things properly, they want to like connect with spirits in the right way, and I'm more than open to share the way that I do it. But I also share, like, if that doesn't feel good for you, if there's another way that works for you, that works better, or that feels more in alignment, that's the way for you to go. Like, what I'm sharing is just through my own experience, and the beauty of it is there's something for everyone on this path, and you don't need to believe what the witch next to you believes in order to be a witch. Like, it gets to be what you want it to be.
And I love that because, like, some witches can be a little probably hot-headed and proprietary about what it means to be a witch. And, like, I feel there's a lot of judgment and stuff. So I really appreciate that you share that, because I noticed for me, like, I do feel curious, but, like, to be honest, like, I also feel a little bit of fear. Like you were saying, like, where does this fear come from? It comes from Christianity. Like, do I feel like I want to, like, do all the things? I don't know, but, like, do I feel curious about the path? Absolutely, I do, and I wanted to share that with you. And I'm like, since you're here, would you be willing to, like, I know we talked about Charm, and since Charm is very much a witchy show, it's just I'm obsessed with that show. I love Charm. I don't know if you watch it or you've seen it. Would you be willing to talk about, like, how much of it is true? What is, like, kind of fantasized for Hollywood and stuff? Like, would you be willing to talk on that? Because I'm sure people would probably want to know and wonder that themselves, if you're willing.
For sure. So I watched the original Charmed, like, back.
Yeah, me too.
Way back then.
We're talking about the original Charm here,
okay,
not the new one.
So it's been a long time, like a long time since I watched it. But I remember one thing that stuck out as being really inaccurate is that witchcraft should never be used for personal gain. I'm pretty sure that was taught in the show. And that's bullshit. Like, what else are you going to use witchcraft for? Like, of course you can do healing for other people and create positive change through magic. But at the end of the day, like, why wouldn't you want that for yourself as well? That makes no sense to me. And then the demon thing, being evil in that show, that's not necessarily true. And magic in general in any kind of movie or TV tends to get very, like, Harry Potterized, where it's like it's just extra. And in reality, what magic often is sitting in meditation and putting yourself into an altered state of consciousness to create your reality. That's the tools that we have. Like, I'm looking over at my altar, which is fairly simple, but any tools that I use, they're tools that help me get into an altered state of being, that help me connect into the reality that I want to be experiencing. And even when it comes to working with spirits, I'm thinking back to that show. I'm pretty sure they would manifest in full physical appearance before the witches. I don't know too many people who've actually had that happen. Some people do. Some people claim to have visions, and I'm not knocking that by any means. But I'm of the belief that these entities and beings can be separate from us, and they can feel like they are completely different beings that we're communicating with, whether or not we see any sort of physical, side of them or not. But they could also be aspects of ourselves that we're connecting to. And I know there's many occultists out there who are, like, they're famous occultists, and they believe that demons and these spirits are just figments of our imagination. And that doesn't make them any less real, because if they're helping us, if we're communicating with them, and we're in a relationship with these entities and they're bettering our experience, then who cares, really? And that's the place that I come from, is if it's serving us, if it's helping us, then I don't really care about getting to, like, the truth of, like, who these beings are and finding out if they're, like, 100% like real or not, because with any of this stuff, it's so subjective. Like, your personal experience trumps everything. So going back to, like, the things on the show, definitely far-fetched. Definitely there's probably some religious programming that seep through there that isn't exactly accurate, but it's still, I find shows like that still fun to watch. Like I haven't seen the
Yeah.
show for a while, but if I'm feeling kind of like in the mood to like, feel a little extra witchy or whatever, I'll pop on Sabrina. I'll watch The Craft or Practical Magic. Like it's fun, and it brings back so many fun memories of when I first saw those movies and TV shows. And like some witches will knock people for getting into witchcraft through those channels, and they'll be like, oh, you're just into witchcraft because you watch The Craft too many times. It's like, well, who cares? Like if if that is what helped that person move on to their spiritual path, and their spiritual path is helping them have a better life experience, who gives a fuck how they got here? Like relax.
Exactly. I know, thank you for that. Because it's like, yeah, I noticed, same, like I would say same for angels. Like people swear that they see them like in a physical apparition. That may be true. We just like project our humanness onto these spiritual beings. Probably same thing for demons. Like angels actually, angels, archangels do not have bodies. They do not have wings or halos. Actually, fun fact. They're just like their aura makes it look like they have it. That's the thing. But they don't. And they don't even have genders. They just have masculine or feminine energy, or maybe a bit of both for some. So I totally hear you, because like, some people may see, because like for me, my clairvoyance is really within my eyesight here. I don't really see like projected external stuff. And that may be rare. That may happen. Like you say, we don't knock it, but that's not my experience. And I've learned on my spiritual path, and you've probably learned this too, like what I see in here is just as valid, even though it doesn't have to be in the 3D. Because like people are quite persnickety about this and like almost snobbish, like, but no, like it's just as valid, our internal vision.
Yeah, and I love that you brought that up, because a lot of people who are newer to working with spirits, they feel like they're doing something wrong if they don't see a full manifestation of a physical entity in front of them. It's,
Yeah.
it's if you do, that's cool, but it's by all means not necessary. Like your experience gets to be your experience, and it's perfect no matter what that looks like.
And also, like, I know you probably talk on this in some capacity, like on our forest like channels too. It's like, I mean, we all have them. It's just some of us have more dominant properties on that, and even if you may not see them, you may feel them, but that doesn't make it any less real or personal to you, right? Would you like to talk on that before we
Yeah.
wrap up?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we're receiving messages all the time, whether that's from the spirit realm or from our higher self or the universe, whatever you want to call it. And the messages come through in different ways and in different strengths, depending on who you are as a human. And so for some people, they'll get like tastes in their mouth, or they'll get an inner knowing, or
Mm.
they'll hear sounds and things like that. Like for me, I'm a very visual person. So if I'm doing a reading for someone, I'll get an image of a scene in my head that I'll share with them. And other times, like I'll just hear words coming through, and I'm just like, oh, okay. And I'll just like let the message be the message. But for anyone who's new to this work and wants to dive a little bit deeper, something I always recommend is keeping a journal and just noticing how your messages come through, and just notice how you tend to receive messages in your day-to-day life as well. Like if
Mm.
you're thinking back to like a really fond memory, is the first thing that pops in your head a visual, or is it the sound of
Mm.
voice, or is it that warm fuzzy feeling from like an interaction that you had with people that you care about? Like just notice how you regularly receive information the best, and that's often the way that you're going to receive psychic messages as well. And one thing that I used to try to do was I tried to get really good at all the different clairs and try to like, work on everything to be like super psychic. And then I worked with a mentor, and he's like, you're really fucking good at, like, he didn't use that term, but he said, you're really good at automatic writing. So just stick with that. Like, don't worry about trying to have things come through other ways. Like when you're channeling messages, if they come through the easiest through automatic writing, just work on that and strengthen that, like work that muscle as much as you want to, because that's naturally what you're good at. So I feel with people, especially if they're brand new to this work, they can be a little hard on themselves and think that they need to like learn learn all the right ways to do things. And that's a very like masculine way to approach this kind of work. And when we get into that energy, that's often when we tend to shut things down because we're too like,
Yeah.
yeah, too like forceful and we're trying so hard. And when we try hard with this kind of work, we block ourselves. We just block messages from coming through. So it's about just leaning back, being open and allowing things to come in the way that they want to come in.
Yeah, I really relate to that because like I remember because like I didn't realize how clairvoyant I was. So I'm so glad you shared all this because like I never thought of it because like I'm very visual and feeling based. But I didn't know how visual I was until last year or something when I got a reading that confirmed, yeah, I'm very clairvoyant. But I didn't know that. Like you were saying to your point, like I took in a lot of classes from major spiritual teachers at the time, like who offered classes on clairvoyance or developing your clairvoyance. Because, like, like I had similar path. Like, I wanted to develop all my clairs. I knew I was clairsentient. I knew that, but I thought that's all I had. I felt like you were saying, like that felt like it was not enough. Like I want to be ultra spiritual and stuff, like the silly pressure we put on ourselves on our path, like you were saying, and also blocks, like when we're stressed out about it and forcing it, like that doesn't help. And then you realize all along, you had all these gifts, but you may not have been shown the way, like how, like you were saying, how you would call a memory. Is it auditorily more or visually? I really like that you shared that because you don't think of these things. And when you said that, I was like, I remember the visual first and then the feeling. Auditory ish. Depends, but I'm very visual. So that's a helpful exercise. And I've been getting back over the last year of getting into journaling and documenting how I'm feeling. And over the last year since October, I've been like really cultivating my relationship with the archangels. And for the first time, just getting a sense, whoa, just getting a sense that I'm so blown away by this conversation. And even my chair as well. And I'm just now starting to feel the presence of the archangels and attune to them. And like that's another thing I want to share in this talk is like it's okay if it takes time to feel or connect to their presence. I'm sure that's been similar to you because like we can feel, I felt depressed like when I would like deliberately make time in my meditation, especially for the journal meditation where you channel messages. I'll literally get crickets, like, okay, now metaphorical crickets. It might as well be literal because I was like, nothing's coming through here. I'm making time. And I'll get so stressed out and depressed and feel like I'm doing something wrong or whatever. And it takes time, right? Was that the same with you?
Yeah, I noticed for myself when I started working with demons, I had a lot of very powerful experiences right at the beginning, and then it feels like there's been dry spells throughout the years I've been working with them. And at the beginning, I was like, what am I doing wrong? Am I not, doing the ritual right? Or maybe I need to, do something different in order to make this connection happen in a more powerful way, like it did before. And then I worked with another mentor and I shared this with him. And he said, once you're plugged into the current, you're plugged in. Like it's your choice. Like if you want to feel that close connection, it's available. There's going to be times when it doesn't, but that is so normal on any spiritual journey. And I know for myself, back when I was in church, I went through that experience as well. And it used to drive me crazy because I thought like, I'm going to church, I'm reading my Bible, I'm praying, and I'm not feeling any connection whatsoever. And when I remembered that, I was like, oh yeah, I've been here before. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter what entity you're working at. A connection is a connection.
Yeah.
And it is normal. And it's so common to go through spaces where we don't really feel as close as we want to, or that communication doesn't feel as open. But again, coming back to this place where we just relax. And what I've noticed is that I'll get the messages in times when I'm not really planning on it, or I'll get that connection when I'm not planning on it. So say if I'm trying to force things and I'm at my altar and I'm doing like the meditations and the channel journalings and things like that, and things aren't coming through, it's when I'm out walking my dog like 2 days later and I'm just in this really kind of like, not like a trance state, but when you're just like super chill, you're super relaxed and you're just like
Yeah.
soaking up nature around you, I'll get like this intense flow of connection coming through. I'm like, oh, there you are. Hello.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that and talked about the dry spells and the initiation I know I heard this term from Kyle Gray about like the initiation phase with spirits or angels or demons or like whoever you work with. Like there's this initiation phase at the beginning, like you were mentioning, because I had that too with the angels. Like I would literally see angel cloud formations or hearts and clouds and stuff in the sky. And I remember feeling super connected in the beginning and even receiving white angel feathers like on my path. And I remember feeling so loved and warm in a really difficult time in my life. But like you, I also went through dry spells. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? I was really, really panicking. And I was even in a darker period of my life where I needed the angels more than ever, right? And so it was like really, really concerning to me to like go through that. I felt like there was something wrong, especially um when I'd read stories like these glamorized stories like in books like of these amazing angel experiences and angel encounters. I thought I was doing it wrong and doing it that and not enough, or there was something wrong with me, and only to realize a decade later I'm very normal. It's a very normal part of the experience. And hopefully this conversation will help someone feel a little less lonely on their path, because or at least feel normalized, because when you hear these stories, like it can feel a little discouraging. I don't know about you, but that's how it felt for me.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up too that when you were in a dark place, when you felt like you needed them the most, that's when there wasn't anything there. And for me, what I found is that that has been the realization that everything is within us, and that yes, we can work with these different entities, but they're within us. Like we have access to everything that we feel they can help us with at all times. It's just that I feel it's our human nature to feel more comfortable connecting to an outside force, even though they're still part of us. So pulling on our own strength in those times can be the exact lesson that we need to learn. And that's sometimes why
Mm.
they tend to, it seems like they're hiding. And in reality, they're just showing us how strong we are.
Mm. It really gives a whole new perspective, because I was like, I really remember feeling very lonely and abandoned when I was going through those tough times. But like you were saying, I really had to rely on my own strength and resilience during those times. And I think when spiritual people really like to just be in love with light so much that like I feel like there's a level of fragility that we can't like get into the grit and resilience of humanity, of our humanity, and which is part of our human experience, I find. And it's okay to embrace the dark feelings. And like you're saying, like, and to your point, like the angels are there. I realize all along they are there. It's just like maybe because we're in a dark place, one, it's our lesson to tap into our inner strength, like you were saying. And also, like, maybe because we're in a dark place, it's harder for us to hear and tap into them because we're struggling. It's not that they're not there, they're there. But like it may be part of our lesson to tap into our strength, call in for help. Like there was always a stubborn part of me that was always stubbornly hopeful no matter how dark times got. So I'm glad that I had that stubborn hopefulness that got me through those dark times. No matter what, I believe like I deserve better, that like this couldn't be it, or all that it is, right? And so yeah, it just I could talk for hours with you. I don't want to hijack your time. You're a very busy lady, but like, oh my God.
We'll have to do a part 3.
I think so. I mean, I hope I can. I'm still pretty new on YouTube, but I hope my YouTube channel can allow a whole hour worth of. Oh my gosh, it's 11:11 a.m. right now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, if I can't have like a full hour worth of this, I will break it up. But if you want to come back for part 3, you're more than welcome, because I love chatting with you. This was so much fun. I would love to do part 3 or part 4, 5. Because like I think it's like high time like we debunk our fragility and just embrace our humanity in this experience, and allow ourselves to be the vulnerable humans we are, and like lean into that and not avoid it, and work with the spirits of the highest good regardless of who they are, and like whatever feels right to us, and like challenging our fears and our feelings around demons and evil, and like allowing critical thinking to take precedent, because Lord knows we need more of that lately. Do you have any closing thoughts of your own for this segment? Because like you said, we might do part 3 or 4 or 5 on this.
Yeah, for sure. The message that's coming through right now for people is to just trust yourself. Like in all areas of life, but because we're talking about spirituality on today's show, if you're feeling the pull to move in a different direction and you're noticing some fear or some hesitation, just tune in and ask yourself, like, wait, like we talked about, where's the fear coming from? And you'll know in your body if it's a true yes for you and if it's a true no. And if it's a no to move in a certain direction, that's okay. It doesn't matter that other people are doing things and you might be interested in it. If it's a no for you, it's a no for you at this time, and there's nothing wrong with that. But don't be afraid to explore. Don't be afraid to like push the boundaries of what you're comfortable with. If you really truly feel drawn to move towards, magic or witchcraft or working with angels or demons or whatever it is that you're feeling the pull to, you're feeling that pull for a reason. It's given to you for a reason. So just don't be afraid to explore.
I'm really glad you said that, because fear can be a major block to trusting our intuition and following our path. So couldn't find a more perfect way to close the show. Thank you for being back, Kelly, and definitely look forward to part 3. And if you haven't watched yet, after you watch the show we were referencing before, part 1 will be linked in the description below, so definitely check it out. And if you haven't already, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this with your friends to like invite people to challenge your beliefs on things. And thank you, Kelly, for coming back. Look forward to another visit here at the Brightest Rainbow Ever. And take care and be safe, cozy, everyone. Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
We can get even deeper, like on bigger topics like racism and like injustices, like this need for avoidance instead of getting real with our feelings and honoring them.
Yeah, I feel there's this idea that anything dark is bad needs to go.